welcome to this week's Forge tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about making journals. We're going to show you many styles, and the first style we'll start with is a field note style journal. You can see the materials on screen, and the first thing you want to do is fold the cover in half. Then you're going to do the same thing for all of your pages, folding them all in half so they fit within the cover. Stack them all together and prepare for the holes that you need to make so that you can hand stitch the binding. About 1 inch down from the top, followed by another hole 2 inches down, and then you're going to do the same from the bottom. Once you've marked where your holes are, you can take a nail and a hammer and kind of punch through those, making sure it goes through all of the sheets and the cover. If you want, you could put a block of wood down here if you don't have a nice cutting mat. This is probably the hardest part, just threading the needle. Once you thread your needle, you have a long running end and you want to tie a kind of loop, slip knot loop in the end of that. Don't worry about getting too fancy with your knot here. If it acts as a slip knot and gives you a good loop, it's fine. It doesn't have to be perfect. Once you go through the holes, you're going to go through the loop you just made and tighten that slip knot. That gives you a nice secure end to work with. You're going to do the same thing on the other side so that on the outside of the binding you see two kind of 1 inch long pieces of string. After this, you are going to be tying off your end and trimming up the excess thread before your journal is complete. Our final step is to trim up the edges a little bit. Inevitably, everything didn't line up perfectly and the inside pages are probably sticking out a little bit. So you can just take some scissors or a utility knife, trim those up, and there you have it. This next method is probably the easiest of the bunch. All you're going to need is those 4 supplies shown on the screen, and really a utility knife is not absolutely necessary. You could use scissors. You're going to start the same way as our last method by folding your cover and your pages and making sure everything lines up, fits inside the cover, and you can use a paper clip here to keep everything together. Next, place some cardboard or something underneath so you're not stapling into your table. Line the stapler up along the crease of the spine, and you're done. Fold those staples down and make sure you don't stab yourself, so use a popsicle stick or something like that. A pencil would work. Trim up the edges as before with your knife or your scissors, and you have a new notebook. And boy, was that fast. Our next method is called perfect binding, and it's a relatively simple method as well. You can see all the materials there, hopefully stuff you have laying around the house. You're going to start by folding your paper in half just like our other options, but this time we don't keep a full sheet. We're going to cut these folded sheets in half to give us 2 pages from one folded piece of paper. After you've cut all your pages, make sure that the edges line up and they're all the same size, and then it's time to prep your cover. So the back of an old cereal box works for this, or other cardboard you might have laying around. You want to find the middle line of that cardboard. You could lay down one of the pages that you just cut using your ruler or straight edge to mark that middle line, and then cut your cover piece in half just like you did with all of your pages. So now we have 2 covers. Perfect binding is going to use glue to adhere all the pages together, so we're going to lay them down, making sure the edges are all lined up, and make a clamping system out of some old textbooks or bricks or whatever other heavy objects you have around the house. You're going to line all that up, make sure it's clamped down nicely, and then we're going to apply glue with a paintbrush. So this glue has been watered down a little bit so that it is a little bit more viscous and easy to apply. You're going to do 1 application, let that dry, and then do at least 3 more applications. If you do a couple more, even better. Once this is all dried, you're going to take off your clamping system, remove your books or your bricks, and you're going to have some nicely glued together pages. Now we're going to finish this up by adding our cover. So we're going to take our newly glued together pages. We're going to make sure our cover pieces still fit accurately, and they do. So we take a scrap piece of paper and cut a 2-inch strip from this piece. If you have a cutting mat like we're using, you have a nice gridded system so you can see and just line that up with your straight rule. If you don't, just measure it out. This 2-inch wide piece is going to be used as the spine that holds the covers and the pages together. Make sure that you take one cover and put it down over half of that strip, so basically covering 1 inch of that 2-inch strip, and line everything up. You're going to kind of mark that so you know where you need to glue and where you don't need to glue as of right now. You're going to glue up just like we applied our glue with the brush last time. You're going to do the same thing here on that half of the strip. Push the cover down on that half that has glue and make sure that it is nice and secure. Now you insert your pages, line up the edges, apply more glue, and then add the top cover piece. Now just fold over that glued flap that you made and line up the edges as carefully as you can with the top cover piece and all of the pages on the inside. You want to push down on all the edges, so kind of go around with your fingers, push it down on the table or your cutting mat. Really make sure that it's well secured and firmly glued down. Then you're going to break out your high-tech clamping system again, put those books on top, your bricks on top, and weight it down until you have a perfect binding. And our final method is a saddle stitch or saddleback stitch using the sewing machine. So this is totally optional. If you don't have a sewing machine around, probably can't do this one. You're going to start just like our first two methods by folding our cover sheet in half, and then do the same with all of your pages so that they fit inside of said cover sheet. Now that you've got all your pages folded, you're going to place those inside your cover as quickly as possible, maybe not as fast as we can do it, fast forward. Then prepare your spine for sewing. It's nice to give yourself a line to follow when using the sewing machine, so you can take your straight edge here and then kind of mark that center line down the crease of the spine so that you can follow along easier as you do this stitch. Not absolutely necessary. You could just wing it and go down the crease, but it'll leave a cleaner line if you follow the line you've drawn. Set up your sewing machine and align along the center of that line. Then, using proper sewing machine operational techniques, aka pushing the foot pedal and feeding the piece through, sew that seam. Now just cut that off of your sewing machine. You're done with the sewing machine, so you can place it aside. Trim off any excess thread that you have hanging on there. Really crease that spine down, and you now have a nice saddleback stitch bound book.